And then I'll give you an opportunity to say where you're from before going to the background.
Slide is going to
Even if you open the top one directly.
Use the arrows. If you use like the arrows, Amy.
Yeah, that's what I was trying. Let's try this. Okay, so now it, but I was not. Let's try this. Oh, now we're
Now we're cooking. Okay. Thank you for coming out tonight to our presentation on Zumbro River Restoration Project. I am Terry Peters. Well, I'll flip to the next slide. I'm Terry Peters. I'm from the district manager at the Wabasha Soil and Water Conservation District. Henry Stelton is part of my team on this project currently. Our office is in Wabasha. I also want to introduce Amy, and I'll actually have her introduce herself. And next slide.
So I'm Amy Anderson. I work for WSB, which is a consulting firm that has its headquarters in Golden Valley, up outside of Minneapolis. But I actually work in St. Paul office. We also have a Rochester office, and then we've recently expanded to both Colorado and Texas. So we do a lot of different environmental work, including, as you'll see tonight, stream restoration work. And then my supervisor on this project, his name is Luke Lundy. He's in North Dakota right now, so he won't be joining us tonight, but he's a big part of this project team as well.
All right, and as some of you may know, the Soil and Water Conservation District has been in Wabasha for about 78 years. Next slide. And you'll kind of have to forgive us tonight a little bit. We're kind of playing with the new technology of trying to record this Zoom meeting and offer it publicly while we have you in the room as well. So I just want to go into a little background on the project. The primary purpose of this project is to restore the geomorphic stability of the stream and connect the river with the floodplain. Plan for this project is to enhance riparian corridors and buffers and improve fish habitat and address and reduce bed and bank erosion and also improve water quality. Kind of the background on this process was that Bo Kennedy, who lives in the area, he brought to the attention of DNR like the need for some work in this area. He is a technician at the Soil and Water at Goodhue County, and through his work, DNR ended up prioritizing the project through Lessard Sam's Outdoor Heritage Funding. And since he's in Goodhue County and this project is in Wabasha County, they asked us to administer the project. So we put out a request for proposal for engineering services in February of 2019. Through that process, WSB was selected from the candidates to provide engineering services. Today, those engineering services are nearing completion, and we hope to have those approved soon and hope to get the request for proposals for the construction portion out by the end of the year, or December 1st, actually, and begin construction in beginning of 2021, if everything goes as planned. So I'm kind of going to turn the meeting over a little bit to Amy right now, and she can give a little bit of instruction on for anybody online, and a little bit of the meeting agenda and how we want to handle that. So we will kind of, if you have, we'll have a question section and comments after kind of each thing we go through, and Henry's going to type notes and comments up onto the PowerPoint, and I'll kind of try to repeat your questions, and if anybody that's on the online answers, then I will repeat the answers as well.
And you guys might have seen that we did start recording this meeting, so it's going to be the video of our presentation tonight, as well as the comments that we received from you and the people who are attending remotely. The video of this entire meeting will be available at the end of the week to anybody who's interested but wasn't able to attend the meeting live. And then I wanted to let people know who are attending remotely, if you are attending from a computer or an iPad or something like that, during the meeting, if you have a question or a comment, there should be a little button for you to click that says raise your hand, and we will see that, and we will call on you so that we can hear your question. And then, as Terry said, we would repeat your question for anybody in the audience here who couldn't hear it. If you are calling in only from a phone, if you don't have a computer, then you need to press *9 in order to raise your hand so that we know you're there. And then same process, we'll call on you. And I'll remind folks of those. We have specified slides in the presentation to collect questions and comments. And so when we get to those points of the presentation, I will check with the folks who are dialing remotely. Folks in the room, you are the lucky folks in that you can raise your hand and I will see you and I will call on you if you have a question. So you do not have to wait if you don't want to. So now that we've kind of talked about how this new both in-person and online meeting is going to go, I'm going to show some of the work that we're planning to do during this project so that you folks can get a sense of what we're proposing. And then we're going to go through the project starting from the upstream end and moving downstream. And then we actually have Kevin Stoffer from, is he Lake City office? He's a DNR staffer from the Lake City office who has been working on the easements and the access for the legal access for this project. And so he's going to talk just very briefly at the end about the easement process. There will be a specific pause for questions and comments at the end of each of these sections, and then we'll have another pause for questions and comments at the very end of the meeting. So that's what's ahead. Next slide, please. So there's 3 major restoration activities that we are going to be doing on this project. The first one, and the one that you'll probably notice the most, both after the project is done and during the construction work, is what we're calling bank grading. So if you look at this graph that's on this slide, the gray line that's kind of hard to see, that's the existing bank of the Zumbro River up north of Maple Street. North of Maple Street, a couple thousand feet. And then the yellow line, that yellow line is the proposed ground surface. So that's what the banks of the Zumbro will look like when the project is complete. So you can see that the very bottom of the channel is not changing, but we are widening the channel above the normal water level. You know, if you were to go out there right now and see where the Zumbro River is right now, below the water surface, we're not disturbing anything, but above the water surface, we would be widening the channel. And we're doing this for a couple of reasons. First, as most of you are probably aware, those very, very steep vertical banks are just bare soil. There's very little vegetation that's able to grow on those, and you can end up with some really severe erosion. By having a more gradual slope, you can better establish vegetation, and you can reduce erosion on those. You can also see two horizontal lines at the top of that graph. The blue one is the water surface elevation as we have modeled it. We've built a computer model for this project. So the blue line is the water surface elevation in the 100-year flood in existing conditions. The orange line is the 100-year flood in the proposed conditions. So you can see by widening the river, we've actually managed to lower the flood elevations approximately ½ a foot in that very, very large storm event. And that's another benefit of this project, is when the channel is wider, not only is it less prone to erosion, but it also, floodwaters don't spread as far because more of them stay within that active channel. And then the last thing that I want to point out, and it's harder to see on this image, but you'll be able to see it better when we get some of the next ones, is if you look at that orange line, it's not straight, or it's not a perfectly straight slope like that gray one is. There's two kind of little flatter areas. And both of those are, what we're calling them flats. There's one that's very close to the normal water surface elevation, and there's one that's higher up. And especially that lower one, when that's going to be about 15 feet wide, it's going to be very gently sloped, and that's meant to be habitat in that's closer to the stream. When you have a straight drop like we have right now, you're not able to establish willows and dogwoods and those plants that usually grow right near a river because it's just a sheer drop right down. And so we put in one kind of flat area at the very lowest part, and then we're putting in another one a little ways up. So that'll become clearer when we look at the projects, or at the project in a plan view, when we're looking at it kind of from the top. But that's what it looks like if you were looking at it in a cross-section view from side to side. Next slide, please. The second practice that we're planning to install is what's called tow wood. And the goals of this project are, we want to continue to reduce bank erosion. We want to stabilize the very edge of the riverbank. And then we also want to create some in-stream habitat. So if you look at that top picture, you can kind of see that, that log with the big root ball at the end of it. And it's that log is sharpened on one end. You can kind of see how it has a point at the end, and it's driven into the bank. It acts kind of like a big push pin. So that is a sort of a stabilizing force against a bank that is wanting to erode. And then underneath that big root ball that you see, if any of you folks are trout fishermen, you know that where you have a snag, kind of a slow water, you often get a nice pool that develops, and it's a good place if you're a nice big fish to kind of hang out. So we're trying to develop some of that habitat in stream and maintain a nice deep pool structure. And then above that root ball, you can kind of see that flat area. That's that low flat area that I was talking about. That's the one that's right near the normal water surface elevation. And if you go to the next slide, I have a picture of what this looks like. So this is a tow wood installation that we installed on the south branch of the Root River down by Preston. If anybody knows the Old Barn Resort, that's where this tow wood was installed. And you can kind of see those root balls, but you can see that most of them are below the water. So most of this work you don't really see. You'd see it when it's being built, but in the normal water surface elevation, you're not going to have big wads of wood sticking out for people to see. It's kind of just a little bit of the top that you can see under a normal water surface elevation. And then you can also see that flat. This picture really shows how there's vegetation growing on that flat, And then there's a steeper slope back behind it to tie it into that existing grade. So that's what tollwood looks like when you're done with it. Next slide, please. And then the last major installation, major practice that we're planning to install is we're going to construct a couple of riffles. So when you have built this nice little flat area next to the stream, a riffle, as we've shown here, helps the water reach that little bench in smaller flood events. So in a large one, in a 50-year flood or a 100-year flood, in one of those really big storm events, water doesn't need any help. But if you sort of put a little step in the channel, then it makes it easier to get the water up onto the floodplain in those smaller events. And that also helps reduce bank erosion. When you're encouraging the water to reach that little flat, then it's released from the channel and it doesn't dig out quite so much. And then it also keeps the channel, so I said reduce head cutting. Sometimes channels will kind of over steepen themselves. If you've ever canoed a river and you kind of go over a little bounce, sometimes that's a head cut. That's a part where the stream is kind of eroding, and that tends to move upstream. These riffles are constructed out of rock, and they're compacted by the construction workers before they're done. And so they, if you have a fine material stream like the Zumbro River and you have a rock riffle installed, then if you have a head cut, it doesn't go any farther than the riffle. You don't end up with big slope disparities through your river. And then I have a picture of what a riffle looks like. And again, oh, and before we move on, you can kind of see that so this is a rock structure, and it has rock that goes all the way up to the banks. And if we flip to the next slide, this is the same project. This is still that Root River project near Preston. And this is what a riffle looks like when it's done. You can kind of see how the water is smooth, and we're looking downstream in this picture. So you've kind of got smooth water above the riffle, and then the water goes through that rock riffle, and you can kind of see on the left and right banks those rocks. That's how high up those rocks go. They go a little bit above the normal water surface elevation, but that's really the only point you can see. You don't see, just like the tollwood, you don't see most of a riffle after it's been installed. Next slide. And then this again is the same project, but now we're looking upstream. So you can see those little root balls of the tollwood, and you can see those edges of the rock riffle right there. That's what we're going for, basically. Next slide, please. First, pause for questions and comments. I'm going to start with the folks in the room, and then I'll check the folks who are attending remotely. Are there any questions or comments?
Well, you're going to have the Zumbro widen out from Main Street to
So the question for the folks on the phone is, are we going to widen the Zumbro above the Maple Street Bridge? We are not going to be widening the bed. We're not going to be digging out like the active channel, but it will be wider above where the water is right now. Yes. And you'll see when we get farther into the presentation, that bank grading work doesn't come all the way down to the Maple Street Bridge. We stop several hundred feet upstream of that. So we will be widening, but it will not be close to the bridge. I don't want anybody at MnDOT getting cranky with me, so we're not going to get close to the bridge. Yes. Yes. Questions from folks on the phone, and I can't see if there's anybody's got the hand raised. Let's go to the participants. Okay.
The questions are.
I do not see any questions from anybody attending remotely, so are there any other questions in the room? Okay, we will move forward then. So now we're going to start at the upstream end of the project, and we're going to move south, and we'll show everybody what we're proposing for various regions. Next slide. So this is an overview of the entire project. And if you're sitting in the room, if you look far to the right, that bridge over the Zumbro, that's the Maple Street Bridge right there. So we are going to be using the existing remnants of that Maple Street Dam to create a riffle. So that is going to look different at the end of this project, but it's still going to be in the same place. And then we have a long stretch, about 2,000 feet of bank grading, and then we have 2 riffles in that bank grading stretch, and then we have about 250 feet of tow wood that we're going to install. Next slide, please. So here's, in the room it's kind of hard to see. You can kind of just see the contours that we are proposing. We're starting about 4,000 feet above the Maple Street Bridge. And this slide just shows how much bank grading we're doing. And if you look, that red line at the bottom is labeled 910. Below that 910 line is that lower flat area. And above that 910 line, you can kind of see the upper flat area. But pretty much everything that's shown in this image is all excavation work. You can see a riffle at the very bottom downstream end. And then if we advance to the next slide. So we have a riffle. This slide shows we have a riffle here, and then where the stream is already bending or curving, kind of trying to bend and curve, that's where we're going to be placing that tow wood. We're going to be placing one long continuous stretch of that, and we expect that will help develop a pool in that area. Again, if you're a fly fisherman or a canoe, somebody who canoes the rivers, you know that when you go through a river bend, the sort of outside of that bend is usually the deep part, and the inside bend is the shallower part. And that's what we're trying to encourage developing right here. You can kind of see that curve starting to happen, and we expect that the tow wood will not only sort of keep that curve where it is today, but it'll help develop a pool right there on that curve. And then if you go to the next slide, at the very downstream end of this grading area, we have another riffle, and that's right where that grading is going to end. So if you look at the aerial, we're not to the Maple Street Bridge yet. Our grading stops well north of that Maple Street Bridge. And then the last image that we have is, this is where the Maple Street Bridge is right now. And what we are planning is that we will use that existing, the remnants of that existing Maple Street dam to build a riffle. So we're going to build that riffle into the remnants of that dam, and we're going to take those down a little bit. Right now, I actually even went and looked at it. I came here during the project survey, but I got here early and I kind of went and looked at it. And right now it's 5 or 6 feet above the ground in that area, and it's going to come down. It's not going to be, those tall stone remnants are not going to be quite so visible. And we'll end up with a nice sort of rock riffle right there. Next slide. Questions and comments on the specific proposal here? Questions and comments from anybody on the phone or attending remotely. Please remember that if you are on the phone, you have to press *9 in order to raise your hand.
You must be doing a good job of explaining everything.
If no one has any questions, I'm gonna hand it over to Kevin Stauffer. He is the DNR staffer who's on the line with us. And he's gonna talk a little bit about the easements and the access for this project. So Kevin, please speak loudly.
I gotta turn on my volume here.
Okay, can you hear me? Hello?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, you're on. Yeah, hi, this is Kevin Stauffer. I'm the fisheries supervisor with DNR out of Lake City. Good evening to everybody. Sorry I can't be there in person, but wanted to.
Kevin, that would be helpful.
Is that too quiet?
Yep.
Does it help? I'm holding the mic as close as I possibly can. I'll try to talk loud and keep it short. Is that any better?
I think so.
Okay, so I want to talk real briefly about our angler easement program. This is a program that's been around since about the 1970s. In southeast Minnesota, it's largely been focused on trout streams. To date, we have about 250 miles of these easements in the southeast. Again, most of them are on trout streams, but we have purchased them on, warm water streams and some larger rivers too. The funding has come from a variety of sources over the years, but most recently, most of it has been coming from the same Outdoor Heritage Fund that this project restoration is being funded by. So, so the easements are acquired only from willing sellers, and most of the time we have more willing sellers than what we have funding for. And that funding does kind of go up and down. Some years we'll get a fair amount. Some years, like this year, we didn't get any. But we kind of keep a contact list of landowners that might be interested in this program, and as funding's available, we keep working through those. So the primary purpose of the easement obviously is to provide access for the public to go fishing. And as you know, most of our trout streams and smaller waterways are on private land. So these easements are a way we can work with the landowners to provide reliable access for fishing. So that kind of our standard easement is 66 feet wide from center. So that could be on one or both sides of the stream. If it's on both stream sides, it would be 132 foot wide. So basically just wide enough so anglers can move up and down the shoreline and find places to fish. Now we can negotiate for wider easements, especially on larger streams where that 66 foot just wouldn't be wide enough. Or if we have a large project like this where we just need more room for construction access. So we use a formula method to determine the price of the easement. So there's no appraisal or negotiation on the cost. Landowners receive a $5 per lineal feet of stream plus the average township land value for the acreage in the easement. And it's important to note that these easements are permanent. They're recorded on the deed. And so if land ownership changes, that easement stays in place. Next slide. Okay, so what is allowed on an angler easement? Well, it's really pretty straightforward. For the public, it allows for fishing access anytime there's an open fishing season on that stream. So if it's a trout stream, you can fish there anytime the trout season's open. If it's a warm water stream, pretty much you can fish there year round. For the DNR, it gives us permission to do habitat work, restoration work, and fish management work. So things like this project, our fish stocking, our fisheries surveys, all that kind of work, that's the agreement with us, is that we can access it to do those things. Next slide. So what's not allowed? Well, these are terms of the agreement that the landowner signs when they sell the easement. Generally speaking, row crop agriculture is not allowed within the easement. There are some exceptions to that on our older easements, but by and large nowadays it's no row cropping within that easement because it's in the riparian zone, and one of the purposes of the easements are to, protect and restore habitat in there. So some other agricultural activities like haying or grazing, those can be negotiated as part of the process, and we can even work with landowners after the easement is done. And we do that frequently, whether it's, maybe working with some rotational grazing or things like that to manage vegetation in the easement. Timber harvest is not allowed, and again, these are shade is real important on our trout streams, so that's one of the things that we do require permission on. But again, we work with a lot of landowners on managing the timber in these stream corridors to get a healthy stand of trees. Structures and buildings are not allowed in the easement. And this last one's real important, is that any other recreational activities like hunting or trapping, those are not allowed as part of the easement terms, because we are only purchasing the right for people to fish in this easement. So the landowner retains all the right to give permission for any other activities, hunting or mushroom picking or whatever. So that's still up to the landowner. Okay, next slide. And this is my last slide. So the easement program that I just described is what we are using on 2 parcels of land for this project, both on the west side of the river. And I want to note the boundaries on this picture are very approximate, so just keep that in mind. But we did go with the wider easement width, and it's just under 4,000 feet. So that will give us the construction access that we need and the room to do this project. And then of course we'll allow permanent angler access along this whole 4,000 foot reach. So that is all I have, and I hope that you could hear most of that, but I think you have my contact slide up next. If people have questions tonight or in the future, please contact me. That's all.
Okay, does anyone have any questions right now for Kevin on easements?
He mentioned the west side, if I heard land showed mostly the east side. Somebody's mistaken somewhere.
I couldn't hear that.
He's saying that the easements,
Amy pictures, her engineering pictures, showed mostly the east side. The man talking, Kevin, just said, used the word west side.
he's asking why the easements are on the west side and Amy's engineering shows the east side.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's the case unless I misspoke.
Can we flip back to?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Kevin, we'll start here.
Yeah. So, yeah, again, so the shapes on here were based off of a center line of the Zumbro going to the west. That this picture would be oriented north and south, north to the top. So it may be just the way these shapes are drawn in there. I can't point here from where I'm at, but it would be from the middle of the river going left as you look at this picture.
And sir, I'm not sure this is going to answer your question, but the work for this project will go outside the angler easement. I don't know if that's we have worked with that landowner to we're going to have permission during construction for construction access and work like that. So we will, so you're absolutely correct that the work on the west side of the project will be outside the angler easement. But that, as far as I'm aware, that's okay with that landowner. So, so in that case, they're kind of different.
Back up to the slide.
Okay.
Somebody, they should have come and talked to the landowner. In my opinion, somebody got something mixed up on these maps.
Oops.
You had it.
Oh, go forward to one more. Oh, one more.
Walk over to the map and point your finger where you're talking.
This is all grading work that's going to be occurring on that west thing.
Okay, but click, there was another slide that showed. Okay, what about where, there, that picture there?
All this right
Okay,
here,
what about the other side of the river, the top?
this right here?
No, up,
Oh, up here.
that's the east side of the river right there.
Yes, sir. And there are no grading activities planned for the east side of the river.
Well, that's our land and that's where it all fell in. Right there, you can see it in the satellite.
In like this right here,
That whole picture, that whole thing right there.
this whole side right here.
No, just see that half moon shaped deal? That
Oh,
That, the water, I'll tell you what happened, we had a cold, extremely cold winter, and, water come from the start of Faribault, as you know,
mhm.
and it came and it undercut it, and it just dropped out. The ground on the saw underneath was a saw thawed, and the current came, it just dropped right down, that's visible in that image.
So that's actually across the road from the riparian area? Is that what where your land is?
Well, it's right where it is, and that's an actual satellite.
Right.
Can we go forward a slide? Sir, would you mind telling me your name? Can we, is your name on the, we have the parcels labeled? With,
Yeah, we're John and Carol Clemens.
okay, so, so Clemens right there, is that long parcel right there?
Oh, you're talking down, at the bottom of the slide is where it meets the river.
Yes, this, yeah. So this is the parcel that right there, and then.
The river don't get over there, the river's way to your left.
Right, yep.
But right at the bottom, in the middle there, above, right, go left with your finger, right there, that land fell down. It's dark now, but this should have been the daylight, you don't see it for yourself. But I'm just mentioning it, go ahead.
You're talking about this part right here.
Yeah.
Yep, I remember seeing that during the survey, yep.
It just went, it's down, I don't know how many feet, 12, I guess.
Yeah, in that section of the river, at least, I would expect.
Well, it looks like there's a ripple and right there, and some of the work that we're doing above to spread the floodplain out should help to stabilize that area.
Back to the river.
Yes. And are there any other questions? Are there any questions from folks on the phone or attending remotely?
Oh, wait, let me. Oh, Amanda's saying she thought the maps may be oriented differently, but I think we kind of looked at where the area was.
Yeah, I know exactly where he's referring to.
Sure.
Can you go to the next slide and maybe one, okay, the one after that.
Okay. So this will be recorded, and I know some of you look like came in a little bit late, and if you want more information Here's our contact information at our office for myself and Henry, and I actually have a card on the back table, and so does Amy. Amy's with WSB. So you'll be able to contact us if you do have any questions or comments. We will be happy to submit them and look at your concerns. We do want them submitted by October 9th. And so if you let us know anything that should be considered before then with the plan, we will take that forward with us. This will be recorded, as I said, or is being recorded, and we will have a link to it on our Facebook page and our website for the Wabasha Soil and Water Conservation District. So you can find it there going forward. I think that was,
It's gonna take me at least 10 minutes to take all this stuff apart. So anybody who wants to stay and,
yeah, we'll be
and
here.
ask more questions or talk more,
Yeah.
we're happy. So we are hoping to put the construction project out for bid in early December. And we would expect that the construction work would start sometime in early January. Oh, and for folks on the phone, the question was, when is this project supposed to start? Oh, that would be a good question for Kevin. Kevin, is this stretch of the Zumbro stocked?
No, those are all natural reproduction fish. So no, the brown trout, smallmouth, everything in there is natural reproduction, and actually has a pretty good fish population.
Part of this is to create habitat for the fish, and hopefully they will naturally regenerate there. I know there are quite a number of different fish just from canoeing last week. There was a few caught. I think somebody spotted a 50-inch muskie.
Yeah, it's a really unique stretch of river, and with the connection to the main Zumbro and stuff, and it's cold enough that it can hold trout pretty much most of the year, but it also has most of our warm water species too. So it's a really interesting stretch of the river, and I think getting some more depth and cover in there going to make some good fishing spots, along with good habitat for adult fish and all sizes of fish. So yeah.
All right. Well, if there are no more questions, we appreciate everyone who came out tonight. There are comment sheets that Henry has back on the table. If you'd like to write your comments and leave them here, you certainly can. And contact us by email, phone, or whatever way you wish going forward.
Thank you very much. Oh, sir.
How long of a project is this gonna be?
That's fine. We would expect that the construction would take, well, that's more up to the construction contractor than it is to me. But I would expect a couple months. Yes, this kind of work is often done in the winter because the ground near the river will be frozen. So it's easier for that. It's easier for them to work in the winter. So yes, we would, and that's part of the reason that we're bidding the project in December, and then we would hope that the contractor could get started shortly after the first of the year. And then they should have a couple good months of cold weather, because they will want to be, if not out of there, at least up to higher ground by the time the thaw comes, and the melt and the high water that comes with it.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening. Pick a date.
Something, either day at work. Or the
Okay.
is it public knowledge that you need to realize the cost? I guess I could do the math on it. Only reason I ask is down south of the river. I know they're looking for parts we get from that state. It's this thing is chocolate trout. And it's unbelievable. My boy, should they get 19 pounds trout. Most a lot of brown. They get some rainbows. Mainly brown.
I've heard that. Too.
Bass, stain, and it whatever the pounds. Oh, that's bold. I'm just kidding.
I'm not sure anymore. I'm probably whatever the township value is.
So, yeah, a couple. And I can see why everything is.
Yes, sir. Yeah, it involves FEMA, and they're not people to get in contact with. But we're working on.
But it's good to have.
Yes, sir.
Opinions.
Yeah. Up that hill, up the way. Yes.
Oh, right, right. Yeah.
He might find like have to be like we're not all.
The
Right,
only
and
work,
you
and
want
I
to
know
public meeting,
that
about that discussion.
the only work that comes south of Main Street is, we're going to work around,
I don't know.
it's not going to go as far south.
No.
Like about 30 feet south, 20 or 30 feet south of the remnants of the old dam.
Then
We're not going to-
talk about it a little bit at a meeting and then we'll have to talk about it at the next meeting and kind of. It's a good concern for staff and different things, but we can't make everything.
Yeah,
You know,
yep, and we can, normally, of those pictures that I showed.
public meeting, so it won't
Oh,
matter, but you know, we can't
that's my property, that's my dog.
work through it and don't take it better than you can. So what it's just,
Their outbuildings, and their farms, and their property lines. And we don't do that now. All congregating around parks and stuff like that. But if you want, all you have to do is reach out to that.
So, we'll,
Maybe watch the the governor 101. Some of that you get some of those things.
the other thing that I got up there, district meeting, see how that operates. I got, I think it's the time I try to see my goals out there.
I was not up to but I just barely pulled in the gas station. Pulled up and got gas and watched it. I would have what?
Fireball, is it getting up there? Is that why?
Oh, no,
Okay. Some people only buy it like